it's easy to make heroes out of bush rangers and policemen, but I think the unsung heroes of the bush are people like the doctors and the nurses who had a tremendously difficult job. They'd have to cover not only just a town like Bourke, but 100 kilometres around, sometimes having to make long rides, maybe at night, to reach people who were sick. They had to face pretty tough diseases. There was diphtheria and typhoid, things like that. That took out big numbers of people here because of sanitation problems and so on. So it wasn't an easy job, and of course they had very crude methods. They didn't have a lot of technology. X-rays didn't come till near the First World War. So Dr. Sides and his family, were they immune from this? Were the other doctors immune from suffering and difficulty? Not at all. He had 10 or 11 children, lost 3 of them. He died fairly early, and his wife had to carry on with 7 kids, I think, to look after. Another doctor, Dr. Faithful, he lost 3 out of 11 kids. And another doctor actually died here in Bourke. So they weren't bulletproof either, and had to carry quite a heavy load. And Bourke's been served by a lot of fine doctors over the years, the Coolikins, and of course the famous Fred Hollows. So they're among the heroes, I think, and these men and their wives deserve recognition as well. Well, infant mortality was very much a part of life in the 19th century, both in Europe and here, and this little grave here for Arthur John Nutting's a good example. In Bourke, in 1 year, in the 1890s, 144 deaths, 24 of them from diphtheria, and this little boy was one of them that died from that disease. You can see with this family, you know, we can tend to think they were simple people, but they've got a quote here in French from the Bible about God seeing an angel in front of them, and a quote in Latin down here about the glory of the world passing. So here's a picture of a sensitive family, educated, but they feel the loss of their little boy too. And it makes you realise as you walk around a graveyard like this, there are so many children were lost early, and the pain that families felt, just how grateful we should be in our modern world of the advances we've made in medical science. And for the men and women, and we're going to talk about some of them over there, who brought wonderful gifts to the bush in terms of medical care. Look at the story of this little family here, the Murray family. Patrick and Joanna lost 5 kids in the space of a few years in the 1800s. That's pretty sad, must have been so heartbreaking for them. You can imagine it, can't you? And it makes you realise how grateful we should be for the work of men like John Flynn and the Reverend Stanley Drummond from Cobar that dreamed dreams as big as Australia to bring practical Christianity to the bush. Over here was the airstrip, and if you were here in 1935 you would have seen a little leopard moth landing there, and a little girl climb out by the name of Nancy Bird, 19 years old, flying one of the first woman flyers in Australia. And she was out here to fly for the Far West Children's Scheme, and she brought air medical care, and then ambulances began to follow her as she flew nurses out from here to the outlying districts like Winaring and Hungerford. A friend of mine told me out at Winaring, for example, his grandmother lost 9 out of 13 children out there. So you can imagine what it was like to have a plane flying with a nurse, or eventually to have a plane fly in and take sick people away, as John Flynn dreamed his dream of the flying doctor service to cover the whole of Australia. No wonder he's on our $20 note. That idea of putting a mantle of safety across the outback as an expression of practical Christianity. And families like these must have been extremely grateful for the work of the Far West Children's Scheme, which grew here in Bourke and transformed the life of the bush, taking kids away from the bush for holidays and medical treatment down in Sydney at Manly. You can still go down there to Manly Beach and there's the Far West Children's Scheme still serving the bush. And I'm sure families like this, what a difference it might have made to them if they'd had a service like that.